I have been told pretty reliably that it's already June next week. That's like the 30th month in a row where I've been like, really? It's already the end of May? Maybe I shouldn't be surprised anymore because that, like I said, it keeps happening to me. But time is just a strange thing that I've yet to wrap my mind around. So with June and July, we, as Katie started to preview for you, we're going to be talking about prayer. We're starting a new summer series next week, and I get to be here with you for the first 2 weeks of that. So we're not quite there yet, but I thought this would be an appropriate time to kind of, reconnect with the thread, because we're on a year-long journey. We are in a year of practice. We've been in the book of Luke this whole year, and that's going to keep going. We've been talking about practice for this whole year, and now seemed like a really good time to just remind ourselves of where we've been and talk maybe a little bit about where we're going, if that's cool with you guys. I was thinking about all the invitations that we have made and participated in this year. So starting with a really big invitation to practice community in neighborhoods. It was a really big ask, and we got a really big response. A lot of you have been practicing community, and that's been really, really cool. And then in the season of Lent, we started practicing fasting and almsgiving. Some new things for many of us that, once again, you, Third Church family, responded really well in participating in those practices. And then where we're going next is prayer. Prayer takes practice. And we're going to spend a lot of time unpacking, basically starting from the basics, because we need it. And come back next week. How to pray. It's like that's a good question. How do we pray? I don't want to spoil too much of the next week, but that's where we're going. Practice, practice, practice. And the more we've talked about practice, the more I've really liked that word. And can I have slide 4, Preston? So practice is necessary. We're committed to progress, right? We're committed to progress over perfection. And if we want to make progress, well, maybe we should be practicing. We know this in other areas of our lives. Tom talked about this 2 weeks ago. We know it with physical things. We know it with mental things. I think it's harder to make that connection with the spiritual. But, I talk to our middle schoolers and our high schoolers a lot, and almost every time I do, I allude to some kind of practice in activities, sporting activities, music activities, because we all know that practice matters in those things. I was just talking, Mason Golke was up here playing the guitar. I was just talking to him before the service because he surpassed me on the Pella High School 800 top 10. Great job, Mason. Yesterday he did that, and I'm quickly becoming a nobody. I don't remember, Coach Cutler, do you remember where? I don't even remember where I started on that list, but I'm every year I move down a little bit more because our high schoolers are just getting faster and faster and faster. Why? I think, I talked to a lot of people about this as I was enjoying state track this weekend, and there were some just phenomenal athletes out there that I couldn't even believe my eyes. I think we, as a society, are getting better at practice in various things. So track athletes are getting faster because they're practicing better and smarter and harder. And so they make progress. Records fall. Payson gets removed to top 10s. We're going to have to expand that to a top 20 next year if we want to remember that Payson ever ran. And I'll tell you what, as I was watching, usually when I watch track, I'm like, wow, I'm glad I retired from that sport because running is hard. But when they get on the blue oval, sorry, that's a tangent. So yeah, we practice. We know that practice is important. We know that deep down, but that's a harder thing to accept spiritually. I know that in the Reformed tradition specifically, that's like a pitfall. It's like it's hard to put ourselves in a place of effort. Wait, how much do I contribute? We tend to swing the other way. The Lord does everything. I do everything. Those are the two extremes. And somehow the Lord does everything, and yet we contribute a little bit. What we do matters, right? That's one of those. There's a gray area there. There's no clean answer because we don't understand it. But my favorite, one of my favorite quotes from Dallas Willard is specific to this topic. He says that grace is opposed to earning, not to effort. And so I think our mental block, my mental block at least, with practice is that no, I can't earn anything. Remember over here, Jesus Christ has accomplished it all for me. I can't earn anything that he has given me. And yet, that grace is not opposed to my effort. Cool? So, as we have gone through this year, we've had specific practices, and then we've also been looking at stories in the book of Luke of encounters that Jesus has with people. And man, encounters with Jesus seem to always be life-changing. I don't think that a person can be the same person before and after an encounter with Jesus. And that's like wildly clear in our story today. But as we have looked at these encounters, we've kind of been asking questions like, where do I see myself in this story? That's a practice in itself. We've been practicing seeing ourselves in this book. We also have been looking at stories of encounters and pulling small practices out of those things. So, for example, if you've been in here the last 3 weeks, Tom masterfully crafted a mini series inside a series, laying out the flow of our mission. And all the while, emphasizing little practices along the way. So 3 weeks ago, he was talking about practicing a posture. Relinquish was his word. Relinquish our agendas. This was the posture. I think he was right here on the stage. John the Baptist. And then, talking about repentance, changing directions, he talked about a lot of practices and how the little spiritual practices, practicing the disciplines, can help us repent, change our direction. And then finally, last week, reorienting our focus, not on me, but on the many, which is a mindset that we practice. We practice so that we can make progress. Cool? Let's read. Let's read. Emily began reading this for us. We have a page number, Preston, on slide 3, if you've got one of these Bibles. Emily started reading this story, but I'm going to read more of it. This is Luke 8:26. They, Jesus and his entourage, sailed to the region of the Gerasenes, which is across the lake from Galilee. The important thing about this region is that it's Gentile land. So they're getting away from the Jewish people, seeing some Gentiles. When Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by a demon-possessed man from the town. For a long time, this man had not worn clothes or lived in a house, but he'd lived in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me. Pause. I find it really interesting when I read that in contrast to most of his followers and disciples at this time in his ministry, this demon-possessed man, we know actually eventually it's the demon speaking, is very sure of Jesus' identity. No one else in this time seems to be sure of who Jesus is yet. That the demon knows, and we talked about authority. The demons can sense Jesus' authority. Verse 29. For Jesus had commanded the impure spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had seized him, and though he was chained hand and foot and kept under guard, he had broken his chains and had been driven by the demon into solitary places. Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "Legion," he replied, because many demons had gone into him. Legion, I'm told, is between 4,000 and 6,000 Roman soldiers. So our assumption here is that several thousand demons are attacking this man. Verse 31. They begged Jesus repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. We'll pause again. What in the world is the abyss? The abyss was simply the prison for evil spirits in the underworld. That's what that was the Jewish belief, that they would be sent to the abyss later, and we see some of that in the book of Revelation. But verse 32, a large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. The demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs, and he gave them permission. When the demons came out of the man, they went into the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. Another pause. This portion of the story has long been confusing to me. Why? What's going on with why, Jesus? Why send them into the pigs? Why send the pigs over the cliff? What's happening here? Put a pin in that. We'll come back to it. When those tending the pigs saw what had happened, they ran off and reported this in the town and countryside. And the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out, sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. For those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Then all the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear. So he got into the boat and left. The man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return home and tell how much God has done for you." So the man went away and told all over town how much Jesus had done for them. People of God, the Word of God. So just like all of these encounter stories, Jesus shows up, and what he is about is very different than what people are used to. The fact that he would even go to this place where there's demonic activity and pigs are being herded, which would be considered unclean and way out of bounds for the Jewish people. Everything is upside down. But this is what we see over and over again from Jesus as he brings his kingdom, as he proclaims his kingdom. What is his kingdom? Who is in his kingdom? What happens when we enter into his kingdom? All of these things are just baffling people because Jesus is unlike anyone or anything they'd ever seen. And every time Jesus encounters someone and brings his kingdom, somebody's experiencing life-giving freedom. That's really obvious in this story, right? It's really, like I said earlier, you can't be the same person on the front and the back end of an encounter with the living God. You just can't. If you're engaging with it, I guess. I don't know. And that's really obvious here. This life-giving freedom, changed man. Great. We love that. So we're asking a couple questions. Can I have slide 5, Preston? So how do people respond to Jesus? Jesus shows up in a place where he's not supposed to be. If you weren't looking, I threw air quotes on that. He is rushed upon by a man with thousands of demons. He frees this man, sends the demons into the pigs run off the cliff, the people get mad, they tell him to leave, he's like, okay, but he sends the man whom he freed back home to tell about him. There are two pretty clear responses to Jesus. The first one is that of the people, which brings me back to the pigs thing. I read a lot of potential ideas of what's going on with the pigs. Why? Why are they in this story? There's 2,000. The book of Mark, when it tells the same story, says the herd was about 2,000 pigs. And some of the ideas were, well, this is a clear symbol that the deliverance of one person is worth the lives of 2,000 pigs. Sure, I don't dislike that. You could say it made it very clear to everyone. Everyone else could see, oh, the demons are gone now. Because if they were just sent to the abyss, if they were sent anywhere else, maybe the people wouldn't know. Like, oh, okay, there's visual evidence then that the demons went over there to those pigs. I see that. Sure, you could say that. I think my favorite answer in all of it was that it became a test. It became a test for the hearts of these people, these Gentiles. And they become afraid because of what's happened. If you were to turn back one page, earlier in Luke chapter 8, I know Tom assigned you to read all of Luke chapter 8, so this should be fresh in your minds. In Luke chapter 8, we see the parable of the sower, and basic summary, there's a farmer sowing seed, and some of it lands here and there and there. As Clay would say, he's not a very good farmer, but the seed over here doesn't grow. The seed over here grows and it gets choked. The seed over here grows and it withers, and then finally some seed lands on the good soil and it grows. And if you're here in the fall, we're going to talk all about parables, and that's going to be our starting point, Luke chapter 8, because it's like the parable that launches all the other parables. What is in their hearts? As they see thousands of pigs flying over the cliff, the cares of the world grip them. As Jesus explains that parable, he says, the seed that fell among the thorns stands for those who heard, but as they go on their way, they are choked by life's worries, riches, and pleasures. And they do not mature. These people aren't quite ready. Their response, you go to next slide, Preston. Their response is fear. Like, don't mess with my pigs, Jesus. They don't really know. As far as we know, this was Jesus' first time in this area. So they don't really know who he is. But it's like, whoever this guy is, they don't seem to care that the man who was formerly crazed and running around naked, living in the tombs, they don't seem to care that he is in his right mind, clothed, doing well. Don't mess with my pigs, Jesus, is their response. For us, I think this symbolizes a little bit of what I would call vices, maybe. So what? Yeah, okay. When I was in high school, I was at a conference, and I don't remember who the speaker was. I was in Colorado Springs, but I remember very specifically that the message was about Abraham and Isaac. Specifically, what are our Isaacs was the question. And as a quick summary of that story, Abraham was promised a lineage as great as the stars. And Isaac was the first child of that promise. And then God says, actually, I need you to give Isaac back to me. I need you to go up this mountain, and I need you to sacrifice him to me. And Abraham trusts God, goes up the mountain, and then God doesn't make him do it. We knew from the beginning of the story, actually, that it was a test. But the whole point, as I'm sitting in this conference as a high schooler, was God isn't going to ask you to give up most things. But are you willing to? So for these people, the pigs are a good thing. They're doing good work. They are hurting. They are providing for their local economy and for their families. It's a good thing. Do you have any Isaacs in your life? Good things that you probably won't be asked to give up. But what would the state of your heart be if you did have to give it up? We see two responses from the man who is freed from demons. Eventually, his response is excellent, and he goes where Jesus tells him to go. But I think for us, it's important to note that his first response is a request. He has a preference. So while the crowds of people, the crowds of Gentiles said, "Get out of here, Jesus, don't mess with us," the man who is freed says, "I'm in, but can I do it this way?" That feels relatable for me. If you're one of the 3,000 people in this town that drives by my house or walks by my house every day, you have probably noticed that we lost a battle with one of our trees and had to have some damage on our garage. What you probably don't know is that, like 3 days earlier than that, we realized that we lost a battle with our water heater, which was leaking and maybe ruining our carpet in the basement. So when things like that start to pile up, I go, "Hey, God, what's the deal? I thought we had an arrangement. God and I have never made an arrangement like this, but when things like this come up, I think I turn to my preferences. I'm like, God, I was going to give you my life as long as you made things easy for me, as long as you provided for me financially and didn't give X, Y, and Z minor home catastrophes all at the same time. I'm in, God, as long as blank." And so this week I had some soul searching, some reconnecting with the Lord to do, because, like I said, I never formally tried to make an arrangement with God, but still, I realized that some of my preferences were a little stronger than I thought they were. Those things get revealed a little bit when things don't go our way. This whole chapter, actually, it's really interesting how Luke has arranged these stories because they're a little different arrangement in Matthew and Mark. But the story before this, Jesus calms the storm. The 2 stories after this, Jesus heals a woman and raises Jairus' daughter from the dead. This whole chapter, you could say, is about the tribulations of life, the storms of life, literally and figuratively. And then in this story, the evil that comes at us, the things we struggle with internally, mentally, and the literal evil, the sickness in the next story, and then after that, the final enemy, death. Jesus confronts all these things. 1, 2, 3, 4, knocks them down like dominoes. And he alone. That's one of the stories, or that's one of the whole points of this, is that he alone can handle those things. But as we run into those tribulations, what is the state of our heart? Do we respond with fear? Do we respond with like me this week? My preferences, God, I didn't want it to go this way. And what's going on? And so, as a practice, can I have slide 7? We're going to prayer next. Worship team, you can come on up. We're going to prayer. And apparently every smart person that's ever written a book about prayer says you got to start by pausing. You got to start by not saying anything. That's the beginning. That's the beginning of prayer. So I'm told by everyone who's written a book about prayer. That's an exaggeration, but. And so as we prepare to talk about practicing prayer, I thought it was also fitting that we pause here, because pausing not only puts us in the right mindset to connect with the Lord, the right mindset for prayer, it also gives us an opportunity for the Lord to reveal things in us if we have fears or preferences that we need to address. Pausing is the practice that can help reveal those things. So let me read this quick about pausing. Moments of stillness at the start of a prayer time are moments of surrender in which we stop competing with God, relinquish our Messiah complexes, and resign from trying to save the planet. We stop expecting everyone and everything else to orbit our preferences. We recenter our priorities on the Lord and acknowledge with a sigh of relief that He is in control and we are not. Much to our surprise, the world keeps turning quite well without our help.